Hi, do you think about your life and how you got to where you are? Are you happy with the way things are going? Are you at a point where you're struggling, or did you get past the struggles and are now moving on to another phase of your life? Well, I think a lot about those things. I've understood for a long time that life is a process of always becoming. I was fortunate enough to take ownership of my life at a very young age. Had a lot to think about over these years, but I've realized just how important many of the things I learned in childhood have informed my life today. And I just want to take a second to talk to you about that. I was blessed to grow up in a house where we had thousands of books. Yep, you heard me right, thousands, probably 3,000. Now, to be in that kind of household meant that there was no excuse for being stupid. And there was no excuse for being bored because you had some 3,000 friends that you could always talk to when there was nothing else to do. As I sit here today and I think back on those days, there were 4 special books that have had a huge impact on the way that I've lived my life. So I want to talk to all you parents about that and to share some ideas about a few books that I think every household should have. The first book I want to talk to you about is The Little Engine That Could. For me, this is one of the most important books because growing up, there were a lot of people trying to convince me that I couldn't. And so reading this book and having this book, one of my faves, kept reminding me that sometimes we have to do what other people think is impossible. And it's one of the books that taught me that there is a way to do everything if we just put our mind to it and we're not afraid to be the one that takes on that challenge, to be that little engine that could do what none of the other bigger engines were able to do. The second book that I want to share with you today is Peter Pan. Peter Pan has probably been as important as The Little Engine That Could because it's a story about the inner child and never losing the dreams and the hopes and the things that we can imagine. No matter what happens in life, we have to decide how our perspective is going to shape the life that we live. And for me, Peter Pan is the ever hopeful young spirit that keeps my inner child in its place as the inner child that guides my life. Because you know what? If life isn't fun, then well, what can you do to make it so? The third book I want to share with you is Johnny Appleseed. What I love about Johnny Appleseed is that he spent his time planting seeds. And in the end, he had orchards everywhere. And the lesson for me in that is that maybe part of life is planting seeds. That we are sowing the seeds for our own futures as we go through life. That's the way that I take it. And I've learned that as we go through life, the things that we have done before are the things that we see later on in life as we revisit them. Much like Johnny Appleseed, planting a seed and then enjoying the fruits of that labor. Now, it also works if you're planting harmful seeds. If you're planting weeds in the future, What you'll have to harvest is weeds. So be much more like Johnny Appleseed and plant seeds that can nourish you well into the future, but in the process may also help other people in positive ways. The fourth book I want to introduce you to is Jonathan Livingston Seagull. What I love about Jonathan Livingston Seagull is that he was daring, and he chose to treat life like an adventure and to travel to places that seagulls never went. And in the process, he saw things that other seagulls never got to see. And in the end, he became a different kind of seagull. That's my kind of seagull. So if you want to think about places to grab courage, think about Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And you know, it's an amazing thing what children's books can do to creating the mindsets that we have as adults. The final book I want to introduce you to was written by a former colleague of mine at Walden University by the name of Dr. Michael Gatson. This is an important book, particularly today when there's so much recognition of the harm that's happening to children. This book, had it been written when I was a child, may have made life easier for me. So if you know a child that is undergoing traumatic events, I encourage you to look at this book, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, by Dr. Michael Gatson. Add it to your library with the other four, and you'll be helping to shape the mind of a child. And it could make all the difference in the world when that child becomes an adult. So bring books into your child's life. I hope you find some inspiration from the books that were important to me in my childhood and really are to this day, because I think about them all the time. They become the basis for the work that I do. They're what keeps me going when I'm in my darkest moments, remembering the promises I made to myself when I was immersed in these books. The point is to keep the inner child alive. So join me December 4th, 11 a.m. for the first of a series of 7 webinars. Thursdays with Pettis, Creating a Meaningful Life. Because for me, creating a meaningful life is the single most important thing for me to do and to ensure happens in my life.